Welcome back to my channel. I am Mama Make You Up. If this is your first time visiting me here, I am a twin mummy who loves to paint my face. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. It is a lovely morning where I am in my loungewear and no makeup aside from lip oil and some mascara. Today I wanted to go over my favorite brushes with you guys. I've been getting some questions about the tools that I use to do my makeup, so I thought I would do a quick video and show you guys my favorite brushes, which mostly end up being the Morphe brand, which you can find on morphebrushes.com, I believe. I'll leave the link below, and let's get into it. So to start off, I'm going to go over my face brushes, and I have about 7 or 8 to go over today with you guys. I have the M439, which is a Morphe brush. This is a foundation brush. I don't use this much before. For whatever reason, I think my skin has just changed a bit where I prefer to use a beauty blender to apply my foundation. However, this brush is highly recommended. I do use it. I will use it to spread around my foundation and then go in with a beauty blender to really press the foundation into my skin. So again, this is the M439 from Morphe, and this I believe is around $8 US. Morphe E2. This is my bronzer brush. This is a nice big fluffy brush. And this one I believe is either a little bit under 10 US or a little bit over 10 US dollars. Is my E41, which is the Morphe powder brush. Whenever you see these names with an M or an E in front of them, they all have different lines. So Morphe has different lines of brushes. The E simply means the Elite collection. So this one actually was the most expensive Morphe brush that I own. So it was 22 US dollars. The Elite, I'm not really sure what makes them Elite, but I couldn't find a cheaper version of this brush. The other ones that have an M in front of them are just their simple Morphe brand. You'll also see ones that are like the Rose Gold collection. They have a gunmetal collection, so those start with G, but that is what all the code names mean essentially. 41 is the powder brush that I really like for applying all over mattifying powder or a thicker powder on my face, and I really enjoy this brush. The brush I used to use for powder, which I didn't find to be big enough to kind of really get the powder spread all over my face. This is something now I use for a different purpose, but this is technically a powder brush from Sephora. It was the 59, so the number 59. I actually use this to apply some of the highlighters that I have all over my cheeks. So instead of just doing a sharp line with a highlighter, sometimes I like one of those lighter highlighters to be all over my cheek and just kind of brush it. So I would use something like this, but as you can tell, these are very different powder brushes. Also a brand new product for me, it's the E48 from Morphe. This one is slightly different from their E49, which is more tapered, so it would look more like this. This one is fluffy, and again, all of these have similar bristles. This one I like for if I don't want to use a beauty blender to set my under eye. You could go in with some setting powder for your under eye and just actually pat it in like this. You could also use it to dust it over your nose and set your chin if you wanted to. I just have a habit of using my beauty blender a lot, but I want to get into using this more often. You could actually also have a multi-purpose use to this brush, which most brushes do have multiple purposes to them. You could actually use this to create a contour. So again, if you're not looking for something super chiseled, this would just at least create that line on the cheek for the contour. I use once in a while if I do want to create that really sharp line for a highlighter is a fan brush. This is a non-named brush that I have, and again, a fan brush will create more of that harsh light of the highlight on your face. The face brush that I couldn't go without is my Morphe E4. So this again is an Elite collection one. I think they have like an M4, something like that, but basically this one I think only cost around $6 or $7 US. This is my blush brush. So this one I really like. You can either stipple up your cheeks or you can just apply. I do find that this collects major product on it, so you really do have to tap out the excess before you go in. These next two brushes are kind of interchangeable in some ways. You will see a big difference in the structure of them. This one right here is the M501 and this one is the M510. So 510 and 501. Obviously this has more of a point to it and this one is more flat. So this one, the M510, is my go-to highlighting application brush. So when I do want to have my highlight really popping at the top of my cheeks, but not with a fan brush, I actually am more likely to dust it with this brush here. This one is also great for highlighting, if anything, because of the pointed tip. I often like to go in maybe right above my brow bone or maybe right under my brow bone a little bit with it. So because of the tip, it allows you to do a few different things with it. You could also use it to lightly dust your nose with some contour and do some highlighting on your nose with the 501. So again, my main highlighting brush is the 510 and the 501 is the M523. This brush is one of your really good contour brushes if you're looking for quite a chiseled look. So this one fits right into the pocket and it's longer than something like the E48, which I said you could also use. This one, of course, just has a longer edge to it. The great thing about contouring with any brush that you use, if you're not totally happy with your contour in general, that's where taking a beauty blender, damp beauty blender with some setting powder, so I use the RCMA setting powder, and you just take it and you just run it right under the product. So basically you can make that really sharp line for your contour, even if your brush doesn't quite cut it. Now I'd like to move on to eyebrows and the eyes. So starting with the eyebrows, so we're going to kind of go here and work our way down. My go-to eyebrow brush is my Anastasia number 12 brush. So this is where I do my brows with, and then I can brush it out on the other end. When it comes to brows, I often do a highlight underneath to either create a sharper line right at the end, and so that's where little concealing brushes really come in handy. This one is the M421 from Morphe, and as you can tell, it's just a tad smaller than this Sephora brush. This one is the number 76, the flat concealer. So a concealer brush can be used to dab over your red spots if you're putting concealer underneath or over top of your foundation. And you can also use these brushes for really defining that under eye because they have a flat top, maybe a bit tapered like this one, and it's not going to get everywhere basically, right? Because you wouldn't want to take a fluffy brush to really define your underbrow. So now we're going to move on to blending brushes and lid brushes. So of course my M441s are a staple in doing my makeup. These are my big fluffy blending brushes. So again, M441, having two of a product like this is really helpful because if you want to go in with no product just to blend out some harsh lines and you've used a really dark color on your lid on another brush, having an extra is really helpful. This is where we get into the really cheap Morphe brushes. I believe these were around $3 or $4 US. The other blending brushes that I do have on hand that for whatever reason I don't reach for as much but are highly recommended by a lot of people I know. This is the E27. As you can tell, this has a more dense end to it. So it's a lot different than the 441 in terms of how it looks physically. This one would apply, I would say, product more heavily, which is great. So I'm going to try venturing into that with some other videos that I do. And again, this is the E27. The other one I have is the M505. So this is a bit tapered at the end. This one really does kind of go all over your lid when you're blending. Again, because it's a bit more frayed out, it just kind of gets the product everywhere, which isn't that big a deal, especially if you're doing transition shades or something like that. So the ones I just talked about, E27 and the M505. Blending brushes, so this is when I really want to get in for that smoky eye and put a color just in my crease. Again, I have two of these products and these are my M433 brushes. As you wash them, sometimes I find some of the edges get frayed out a little bit, but they still get the job done. So again, 433 for a tapered blending brush to really get into that crease. And I could not go without these. You would use to apply a lid color to your eye. I have a few to talk about here. This is the G20 from Morphe. So as I mentioned earlier, the gunmetal collection starts with G. This is just, again, so it's not frayed out, it's not fluffy, it's just a really flat brush. And this is my B83, which I also use very frequently. These are great to spray with MAC Fix Plus if you're going in with a shimmery color and you really want it to pop. But basically they're small enough that they can get all over your lid, and I really like these. The other one that I invested in, I often saw a lot of people with kind of, I think these are technically concealer brushes with the yellow bristles. This is the M224, and this is one that I particularly like to go in if I want to use a really vibrant shade all over my lid. Because it is so big, I'll spray it with Fix Plus and I'll go right in. And again, it has really sharp edges, so it just helps get the product right up into your crease, and then you can run it along the lid line here to get it really just tightly on your eyelid. The bottom lash line, there are a few smudgers that I'd like to talk about. So smudging is just done, let's say, when you have put an eyeliner or a really dense amount of color right along your lash line and you just want to blend it out a little bit, a smudger really comes in handy. This is the M508. This is really tiny, and again, you could see how any of these brushes really could be used for a variety of things. This 508, you could actually also easily use it to define your brow if you wanted to. I often use it for the bottom eye to smudge out a color. My first ever smudger that I still have in my collection. This is the Pro Smudge, the number 11 brush from Sephora, M432, which you've probably seen me use a few times. This is where I'm actually applying the color along my lash line, and because it is so chiseled, it just stays right where I want the product. And that is the M432. If we look at actually smoking out the lower lash line, so once the product is there and we want more of a blown out look, instead of just smudging it, we may want the shadow to really just be smoked out along the bottom. This is where these tools are priceless for me in creating some of those looks. This is the 507, which I now have realized is great for getting into the crease and blending out some edges in the crease up here. And I also use it hugely underneath the eye to either apply product or just to smoke out product that's already on the under eye. It's got a great tapered end to it, so it makes it really multi-dimensional. The other items that I use to smoke out my lower lash line are actually super similar to each other. I ended up getting both because one was sold out, but I still really wanted it once it came back in stock. And these are the B42 and B18 from Morphe. So these, one is longer and doesn't have as much of a tapered top, and the other one has a little bit of a taper to it. So obviously these are a lot thicker than something like the 507 because the 507 has a more flimsy top to it. These are very dense. So when you do apply product, you will get a lot of product on your under eye, so just being careful to tap out any excess. And the other brush for my eyes, the E36 from Morphe, this is my wonderful inner corner highlight brush. So it just fits into that tear duct of your eye just perfectly. You can easily take this and also highlight your underbrow. So not carving out with concealer, but this is when you want to highlight your underbrow. This is a great brush to do that with. The final brush that I have to talk about is not actually a brush, but of course it does help you apply products in general. I thought I would just throw in talking about all of my beauty blenders. So as I've said before, I think in my drugstore video, these beauty blenders run probably $20 some at Sephora. I go onto wish.com and I will link that down below. And wish.com has these beauty blenders for about $7 or $9. I just got this one in the mail and it's got a much different size and container to these other ones. I think I paid a little bit more because it comes with a little soap item at the bottom of the package. So I think it's a cleaner essentially. So very affordable. The other beauty blender that I really enjoy is my Morphe beauty blender. They have some in a variety of shapes. This one feels very different texture-wise from the regular beauty blenders, so just be aware of that. But application-wise, I would say they're very similar. Alright guys, so that is it for today. This was a video about my favorite makeup brushes, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Any comments, please leave them down below. Please subscribe to my channel, share this video, and I hope to see you next time in my next video. Have a wonderful and colorful day. See you later.